imagine waiting your entire life for a reunion that just, well, never comes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you sit in front of a TV screen for like 138 days straight, watching thousands of people weeping in each other's arms, right?
Mm.
And you're just looking for one face, a brother lost decades ago in the chaos of the Korean War. Welcome to today's deep dive, by the way.
Thanks. And, that level of devotion is staggering, but it's also incredibly heart-wrenching because as the notes from today's sources reveal, that face actually never appeared on the screen.
No.
Right. The author's father, he died without ever finding his brother.
It's just such a devastating real-world story. And, well, we're looking at it today because it acts as this really surprising, powerful lens for understanding an ancient text, Ezekiel 34.
Exactly.
Because this isn't just some dry theological theory for you to study. It's a raw look at deep human longing, lost families, and the heavy responsibility that comes with having strength.
Yeah, and to really understand the gravity of that longing, you have to look at the sheer scale of that 1983 broadcast in South Korea.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So it was called Finding Dispersed Families on the KBS network. And initially, it was scheduled as just a brief, temporary special, to help people separated by the war find each other.
But the mechanics of how they pulled this off completely blew up the schedule, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the station essentially turned their headquarters into a massive live bulletin board. They broadcasted people holding up handwritten signs with their lost relatives' names, physical descriptions, hometowns.
Yeah, they were just standing there with these signs.
They basically tied up phone lines across the entire country, visually matching people in real time on live TV.
The demand was so overwhelming that the network actually had to cancel all their regular programming.
Wow.
Yeah. The sheer logistics of fielding calls and verifying identities on the fly, well, it resulted in 10,189 people being reunited.
That is wild.
It was a logistical miracle. The records are actually so historically significant, they're preserved on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register now.
It basically functioned as this massive televised beacon of national trauma and, hope. But for the author's father, it was an agonizing marathon of unfulfilled longing.
Yeah, just brutal.
He watched every single episode, weeping in joy for others, but utterly powerless to change his own reality.
And what's fascinating here is that specific powerlessness is where the author draws a really profound line to Ezekiel 34.
How so?
Well, where a human father is bound by the limits of time, resources, and geography, the text presents a divine figure who just isn't. The scripture reads, "Behold, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out."
So it takes that unfulfilled earthly longing and answers it with an absolute guarantee.
Precisely.
I see the parallel of the search there. But honestly, reading the actual text in Ezekiel, the tone is completely different from a heartwarming family reunion.
It really is.
Yeah, the language has this sharp, almost aggressive edge.
Yeah.
I mean, God actually sounds furious. He specifically targets the, quote, fat and the strong sheep. The text asked them, "Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture, that you must tread down with your feet the rest of your pasture?"
Yeah, they're muddying the water.
Right. I need some clarity here. Why is a divine rescue mission focusing so heavily on livestock bullying each other in the mud?
Well, because the text insists that the scattering wasn't an accident. The flock didn't just wander off. They were actively driven away by two distinct forces.
Okay, what were they?
First, the failures of false shepherds who just abandoned them. And second, the cruelty of the strong sheep within the flock itself.
So the strong ones were pushing the weak out.
Exactly. The strong were using their physical power, their side and shoulder and their horns, to violently shove the weak aside and ruin the resources for everyone else.
Wow, okay, that reframes the entire concept of a rescue. You can't just pick up an injured sheep and put it back in a pen with an abuser.
No, it doesn't work. True rescue requires judgment. The weak can't be saved unless the oppressive strong ones are dealt with first.
That makes perfect sense.
That is the core mechanism of the passage. The divine search isn't just about location, it's about justice. The promise is to bind up the injured, but also to destroy those oppressive strong ones.
And what about the leadership going forward?
To ensure the flock is fed in justice permanently, the text promises the appointment of one true shepherd, identified as his servant David. And according to the source notes, this specific prophetic promise was fulfilled about 580 years later through Jesus Christ.
So what does this all mean for us? The reflection notes basically take this ancient text and drop a very modern challenge right in our laps.
They really do.
We're being called to participate in this ongoing rescue mission. The expectation is to actively look out for the people in your own life who feel isolated, forgotten, or just far from God.
Yeah.
To be the ones helping to facilitate that reunion.
Just think about the 10,000 reunions from that 1983 broadcast. Those didn't happen by magic.
Right. They required massive, coordinated human effort.
Exactly. People had to hold the signs, make the phone calls, and keep the cameras rolling.
Which leaves you with something to consider long after this deep dive ends.
Yeah.
If you are part of that flock and you've already been found, your role changes entirely.
Yeah, it does. Look at your own life and the spaces you occupy. Are you using your strength and influence to protect and gather the vulnerable? Or, are you unintentionally shoving the weak aside and muddying the waters for everyone else?